Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Unboxing What's New in Q1, which is, as the name says, a session where we're going to go through mostly everything that's been released since the beginning of the year of 2023. My name is Arlemi. I'm the developer advocacy lead here at Postman, and I'm joined with Debo. Debo, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Badebo. You can call me Debo because Badebo is always a mouthful to pronounce. I'm a developer relations engineer at Postman.
Yeah, sorry, I went straight for the nickname because I'm just used to it.
Yeah.
And you're based in?
Yeah, I'm based in Nigeria.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I'm based in London. So with that said, that's us. Bit of the agenda for today is going to be very quick. We want to learn about you. We want to know who you are, what you do, especially in terms of APIs, because then we know our audience and we may add some information or remove some information. Probably not. Then we'll jump straight into it. We'll have a walkthrough of the different features. So it's not going to be this feature does that. We kind of wanted to craft a story so you can follow along. And the point of this is that you may also discover stuff that has been there for a while that you didn't know about. So we just want to make sure we highlight as much as possible. And then towards the end, we'll share some resources to learn more about Postman, to maybe get some badges about what you can do with Postman. And we'll finish with the Q&A I mentioned previously. So any questions, make sure that you put them in the Q&A section again at the bottom of your screen. And we'll look at them towards the end and we'll answer them. We'll keep an eye on it anyway. So if there's like very specific questions that are related to what we're doing, we may answer them on the spot. But regardless, if you don't get an answer straight away, there's going to be time at the end. So with that said, let's learn a bit about you. So I'm going to push a poll that's going to show up on your screen. But before I push that, I just want to quickly go through that graph that you see on the right-hand side of your screen. So this is the API lifecycle, we call it, and there's two sides. So there's the producer lifecycle and there's the consumer lifecycle. So the reason I show you that is because we have a question about this. And which one do you identify with? Maybe you're creating APIs for others to consume. So you're a big company, maybe like Twilio, you have an SMS API, you have a video API, etc. Or maybe you're a consumer persona, which means you're consuming API. You have your own application and you're just calling these APIs. Again, maybe calling the Twilio API to send an SMS. And you're on that other side. So you're evaluating what API you want to use, integrating it, testing it, and then deploying it. So with that said, let's push this poll and see what you have to say. So now you should have a poll on your screen with two questions. One about how long you've been using Postman for, so what's your experience level? And then how do you identify? So obviously you can be both. And it seems to me like most of the people are both, which is good. So which one would you be, Debo?
Well, I'd say I'm both because I do build APIs and I also consume APIs. So I'm on both sides of the spectrum.
And how long have you been using Postman for? Not a tricky question.
Well, I'd say I've been using Postman for about 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So initially, when I started using Postman, it was just for like testing my APIs from the consumer side of things. I wasn't using like the producer side of things in Postman.
Looks like everyone has answered. I'm going to some people changing their answers still. Okay, let me end the poll and then share the results with you all. So what do we see? We see that in terms of experience, we have it's pretty much spread apart evenly. So we have 25% for less than 6 months, 15% 6 months to 1 year, and then 36% 1 year to 3 years, and another quarter, so 24% for more than 3 years. And you already probably call yourself a Postman veteran at this point. On the other side, in terms of like the persona, we have a very little, like only 5% calling themselves only API producers, which is interesting. 34% for API consumer, and then 61% that consider themselves to be both. And so that comes to like what you consider yourself to be as well, Debo, which is do it all at the same time. Cool. So I'll stop sharing, and then I guess we can move on to the features walkthrough. So I'm going to switch screen. I'm going to talk a lot at the start. Debo may interrupt. from time to time, and then Debo is going to talk a lot, and I may interrupt from time to time, just so you know what to expect. But with that said, first thing you may see, so I'm going to talk through what I'm doing. I'm landing in Postman. That's my homepage. And straight away, if you've not been opening Postman for more than 3 months, you may notice something new. The homepage has changed. There used to be a few more things here. First, there was an activity field. It's not there anymore. And there used to be some news at the top right. This is also gone. So you've got the new homepage. You still have news at the bottom left here. But what we want you to do is to be able to jump straight away into what you want to do. So you can see here, I've got my recently visited workspaces, and I can jump into this. And I've got the popular APIs. Twitter API is still there for now. And we've got other ones. And you may click here and explore all of the APIs that you want to play with. If you're not familiar with the API network, I would recommend checking it out. There's tons of APIs out there that you can play with. But that's your homepage, simple, straight to the point. And that's actually what I'm going to do. Straight from here, I'm going to jump into what's new in Postman, which is the workspace we're going to play around with today. So that's my workspace. There's a couple of things here, and I clicked on it. Another way to access it would have been through the search. So if you're not familiar with the Postman search, you have it here at the top, and you could type in what you want to find. So it could be, what could I be searching for? Maybe Postman API, for example. So if I search for that, I can see all of the results. I can see this public workspace or this Postman API. I can search for this, the one that I'm already in, what's new in Postman. And then you can see the name of the workspace, who's created it, the type of workspace. So if it's public, it means anyone has access to it, or maybe it's one that I've created myself. And then I can play that way. I could filter if I only want workspaces. I can do workspaces, etc.
I think I like this one a lot. I think you could search for like specific requests as well, and then it just brings up like the workspace that has like that request itself, which is really cool.
That's true. It's one of the new things. So you used to only be able to search for like higher level type of entities, so workspaces, collections, APIs, and now we go all the way down to requests. So if you have a specific request that you want to find, you can search it here, filter by requests, and then you'll be able to find it. Yeah. So now, before jumping into the next one, I want to talk about developer experience, and that's one of the focus of Postman for this Q1, and you notice as we go along. One of the things that's been asked for by a lot of people was customizable shortcuts. You may be aware of shortcuts in Postman. So, for example, if I create a simple new request, the Postman code, I can press Command and Enter, and it will send a request straight away. So, little shortcuts that you can use to make your life easier. But not everyone is using the same shortcuts, and some people may want to use different ones. So now in Postman, you can head to your settings, go to your shortcuts, and you're now able to customize them on the app, actually. That's my bad. I should have used the app for that. So let me quickly show that.
I mean, I use Command Enter a lot when I want to run a request, rather than just dragging my mouse.
Yeah. So if you're in the app, sorry, you can actually customize the shortcut. So let's say I was doing the send request, which is Command and Enter. So I can edit that, and I can make that Control, Command. So that's Control, Command, and Enter. Saved, and now I can create a new request. And the same way I was doing the other side, I can do Command, Control, Enter, and send it. That's just one. As you've seen in the list there, you can customize most of them for the interface, the sidebar, so searching things, moving things around, opening your settings, etc. So that's for the developer experience side of things. Cool. So we talked about API producers and API consumers at the start. I'm going to go through the flow of an API producer. I'm an API producer. I want to import something. I've got an API that's already created, and I want to import it in Postman. I'll go here, click import, and we've got this new import window. So if you've been using Postman in the past, from that window, you had to select exactly what you wanted to import, paste what you wanted to import. Now, this new UI means you can drop pretty much anything, and Postman is going to be the one figuring out what you want to import. So in that case, I've got an API with that's made of several files. So I've got this openapi.yaml with different folders for each part of the API. But what I can do, I can grab this entire folder, drop it in here, and then straight away Postman identifies that it's an API, it's made of different files, and I can choose how I want to import it. So I'm going to select OpenAPI 3.0. It's going to generate several things when I click import. So I can see there's 3 elements being imported, a definition and 2 collections. So one of them is going to be linked to the definition, and one of them is just going to be here in my collection. So let me go to the APIs and make sure that everything is imported correctly. I've got my definition. I've got the root file. So that's the one that describes most of the things. And then I've got all of the schemas, responses, resources, etc. One of the new things that we've added here is that you used to have to figure out from here where everything was living. So you had to go here, kind of find the correct things, etc. Now from the root file, if you hover on one of these reference to something else, you can press Control and click, and then you directly be pushed to where that file is. So you don't have to figure out and know exactly what's what. Again, just a quick making it easier or like better experience or like authoring schema experience in Postman. So again,
aside from like importing multiple or single files, what other places can you import a definition from? I think when you were trying to import at the bottom, I saw like sources somewhere there.
Good question, actually. So I did say, you can put several things in there. And when I say several things, you can actually paste a curl command here, and it's directly going to create a request, for example. But at the bottom here, you've got repository. So if you're working with GitHub, Bitbucket, or GitLab, you can import them from here, or even other sources. So if you have like different API gateways that you're working with, or Azure code repository, you can also import it from there. Another one that's actually pretty fun. I'm not planned to demo this one, but let's try it anyway. So I'm going to get it's not a request that I want. So I'm going to create a new request, just a simple one. And you may or may not be aware, but when you have a request in Postman, you can actually generate the code directly. And that code, you'll be able to use it in your application. So you may try some stuff in Postman, you're happy with the results. And once you're happy with the result, you can go in here. And then, for example, this one is new, C#, HTTP client is a new generator that we've added. I can take that code. It's the same code of my request. It's already got all of the headers set up, etc. And I can paste that in my application. The other thing we're able to do, and I'm kind of going to go in a big loop. So it generates a curl command. So I can copy this. And now I can open a new request directly in here, paste my curl command, and Postman is going to directly translate it to a request. So if you have a curl request somewhere from like some debugging or testing that someone shares with you, come into Postman, open a request, paste your text, and then voila, you have your request.
This one is really cool. You could copy call commands from documentations directly and just create a request out of that.
That as well, yeah.
It's really neat.
Okay, let me go back to where I was. We've got API, so I'll go back to the API I created. We kind of like went over collaborating in Postman in terms of like sharing things, but you may want to like get someone's attention to things in Postman. One of the things that we've added back in API definition is the ability to comment on things. So let's say I'm working with Debo right here, and he's the one who knows how to design APIs. I don't know. Maybe I'll tell him, oh, here, let me add a comment. So we're kind of zoomed in so you can all see, but I'll add comment here, and I'm going to say, Debo, can you please update these tags? Leave a comment, and now Debo is getting a notification. He can come in, update the tags if needed, or just let me know that I don't know what I'm doing and these don't need to be updated. But you can now collaborate directly on your API definition. Oh, look at that. He can. Good. Debo to the rescue. So he's going to do it. I'm going to resolve that comment. And that's it. You can collaborate directly in there. I think that's about more or less about the collaboration there. One of the things that we've also added, and then I'll be done with the API producer side of things, is let's say you have a new API. So I'm going to create a new API from scratch. Then you can see that flow as well. So I've got this new API, demo Q1, and I'll continue with nothing. So I could have imported from GitHub or GitLab again. I'm just going to go ahead with blank one. So I'm going to author from scratch and say create a boilerplate one. So we have a boilerplate API definition, which is a demo of like buying or renting spacecrafts. So all it does is got this one path, which is a get, and it gets the different spacecrafts that are available. One of the things that I want to show you, and that's going to be extremely valuable for the people that are working continuously on their API definition. So if I generate a definition now, collection, sorry, from that definition, I have this little box that I can tick, which means whenever I make updates to the API definition, Postman is going to see it and it's going to offer you to update the collections that are generated from it. So let's say I have some spacecraft documentation. So I have a collection, it's there. I can see the documentation if I want to. But now let me go back to my API definition, buyer and spacecraft for very little monies. So I'm saving this. It's making some changes. And now, hopefully, I actually don't know if this is taken into account. I'll change this to false as well. No, is that not valid? I need to make something that's valid that would help.
Yeah. You try modifying your path or adding more parameters or adding or removing parameters.
Slash space. Okay, this is valid. Cool. So I've changed something. Now I have a path that's different. And I can see one thing here on the left. I've got this icon that tells me there's updates that are available from the definition. So I can either go here and get the changes, or I can go back to the homepage of my API, click the update collection, and see what's changed. So it's going to tell me we have this new get request, which is spacecraft ID / space, and we've removed that one. So I'm going to click removing the other one, updating, and that automatically updates the collection with the correct stuff. Yeah. So the benefit here, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, on that side, I like that part where you can review what is being changed before it gets updated. So you're sure you're updating the right thing.
Right, and the benefit here is, let's say you're the one who works on the API definition, and you've got other people writing tests or updating the documentation. You don't want to override what they're doing, right? You just want to push what's new. So that's what it allows you to do. So you've got different teams working on different parts of the collection, but you obviously don't want to have them to recreate everything every time you update the collection. Cool. So that was for the APIs tab. It was a lot of stuff. Now we're going to move to the collections tab, which I'm assuming most of you will be familiar with. A bunch of stuff in there. So for example, I have that collection that I've just generated. You may be familiar with variables. So you can have variables at different levels in the environment, in the collection level, or as globals. There's a couple new things here. So I'm going to add some random variables here. Oop. Now you can actually filter the variables. So let's say you had tons of them. You now have this little filter helper, and I can search for my sum variables, and then it's going to highlight it directly, and I can do it. The other thing is you can also sort them. So you can click on any of the headers here. So the variable name, the value, etc. And then it's going to change the sorting of your variables. And this is available. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Can I also search by initial or current value?
Good question. If I search for random, this will give me the initial value and current value. So for example, if you know that you have a specific, let's say your host, like your base URL is something that you know is localhost, but it's lost down in your list of variables, you can search for just the value and then replace it directly. So that's available in, again, collection variables, environments, global variables. And that was also something that was asked by a lot of people, and that we're pretty happy that it's out. I'm pretty happy for these people, and I'm pretty happy for myself, because this is also making my life a lot easier. Let me see what I'm forgetting. Okay, 2 more things on that side. You may be familiar with collection runs. This is not new, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. If you have a collection in Postman with a bunch of requests, you can send them one by one. This is not going to work because I don't have a server running, but I can go here, run one, run the other one. Or what I can do, I can run all of the requests at once. So I can go to the collection level, and then there is this run icon here. So I can click this, select the different folders or requests that I want to run, and then run it. So one of the things that's changed here is that straight from this view, if you've been using it, if something was not working, you had to go back to your request here and then kind of run them again, see what's not working. Now you can click on any of them, and then you'll see exactly what happened. So you can see the headers that were sent, the request, the response, etc. So again, this one was not actually running, so you're not seeing anything, but this allows you to debug much more easily everything, because you don't have to recreate the scenario in which this doesn't work. You can just click in here and then start inspecting, etc. Cool. I think that's about it for my side. I'll pass it on to Debo. Before we do that, we do have a question for you. And I'm just going to revert to that slide while I pull up the poll. Debo, you have a bunch of stuff to show us. And I think a lot of it is about protocols. And the question we have for you all before we move on to that section is, how many protocols do you think Postman supports? Or which one of the following protocols do you think they support? So I'm going to put a poll on your screen again. Debo, do you want to run them through the question?
Yeah, so Postman supports different protocols, right? I'm not going to list them. You can already see the question being asked. So you have to select the ones you think Postman supports, or if you think Postman supports all the protocols that are listed. The options are REST, SOAP, WebSockets, Socket.io, GraphQL, and gRPC. So if you think Postman supports all of these protocols that are listed, you could select all of the above, or you could select specific ones that you think Postman supports.
Yeah, I'll give everyone maybe 20 more seconds before.
And let us know which one of them you've used in the comment section.
Good question, yeah. Oh, actually, in the meantime, I'm reading some comments that you see Aman commented about. So Aman has been doing some badges for Postman. So if you have questions about this, you can ask them. But I'm glad their issues were solved. Cool. So let's have a look at the answers. I'm going to end the poll in 5 seconds. So if you want to still 5 seconds, I see some people have used REST and SOAP. Okay, let me close the poll. So my trick with this type of question is whenever there's an all of the above option, that is the right response. And in that case, there was an all of the above, and that was the right response. Postman actually supports all of these protocols, but admittedly, a lot of them have been added recently, and that's what Debo is going to show us now. So Debo, if you want to take over the screen sharing, and then you can show us all of that.
Okay. Let me share my screen.
In the meantime, I just see there's a question in the chat about switching the language of the Postman UI. You cannot do that directly in Postman, but if you're using Postman in your browser, there's like the Google Translate add-on or other ones that allow you to change the language of the UI. All right.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the options that we had in the question that let me ask was REST, which is done over the HTTP protocol, which is what most people who use Postman are familiar with, because the other protocols are like fairly new in the Postman app. But there's something new with the HTTP protocol. We call it server-side events. You can now make use of server-side events in Postman. And what server-side events is it's a way for there to be asynchronous communication between the client and the server. So if you want to make an HTTP request, you create a request, you send the request, and then the server responds to that request. But with server-side events, the server can actually send data to the client without the client actually requesting for that server. So I'm just going to like do a very short demo here. I have this request here, and I'm going to be using a Postman echo service. This service is taking this path variable that tells us the number of requests we want to get from the server. And when I send this, I can see that I specified 5 as the number of events, and I'm getting 5 events back from the server. If I was to specify 3 here, and I send this request, I'm going to be getting 3 events emitted from the server to the client here. So if you work with server-side events and you want to play with it in Postman, or you want to create collections and requests for it in your API workflows, you can now do that. One other thing, the update we made to authorization in Postman. So the first one is to JWT. When you're working with like different forms of authorizations that we provide, there's quite a number of them. You can use API keys, bearer tokens, basic auth. Usually when you want to work with a JWT token, you'd select bearer token and you input your JWT token here, and then it gets added to your request headers as bearer and that token. But now you can directly work with JWT tokens. So here you can see that I selected JWT bearer, and for my JWT token, I can select the algorithm I want to work with. I can also input my JWT secret. So actually, I'm just going to go to jwt.io. Which is a website for JWT token. And they have like this example here, which is very useful. So I'm going to copy the JWT secret here and include that here. Then for the payload could be anything in JSON. I'm going to copy their payload in this example here and use that same for this demo. And here you can see that I could select where I want this JWT that will be generated to be included. If I want it included in my request header, I'll select request headers, and the request header changed from 8 to 9. I don't know if you observe that. Let me change it back to query param. It's now 8. When I modify it and change it to request header, now I have 9 request headers here. And at the top here, you'd see that I have an authorization here in the header, and it's it has included the token here. So yeah, I think.
So actually,
you could also select.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go for it.
So I see there's a question that's actually related to what you're doing. So you're setting up the auth for that request, but there's a way to set it. What if I wanted to do that for all the requests in that collection?
Oh, that's an interesting question. So I could do this at either the request level or the collection level. So yeah, I was going to modify this to bearer, which is sort of like the default that people use for authorization. If I wanted to do this at the collection level, I'll click that collection. I'd select no JWT bearer here.
And you could do the same thing. Yeah.
Add it to the request header. So I could do the exact same thing here. I could give it my secret as well. Let me copy my secret again.
So because someone was asking, and their question was, that it was not working. So when you're doing this, one thing you want to make sure, if you set it at collection level, is that your requests in the collection or in the folder actually use the authorization inherit from parent.
Yeah.
So so that's the other thing you would need to do. But otherwise, that should do it.
Yeah. So let me select inherit from parents here and come here. And you'd see that in my request header, even though it is from the header here, payload, you should include this in the request header. It's going to automatically.
You need to save, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, here. So now I have it automatically included here. And if I had selected including it as a query parameter and I save, then when I come here and I go to my params, that token that was generated is automatically included in my query parameter. So it creates a much more easier way for me to work with JWT tokens as a form of authorization.
Thanks.
And talking about authorization, one very popular form of authorization that we use a lot is the OAuth 2.0. If you've worked with APIs that use OAuth, or if you probably work with Google APIs or any other API that uses OAuth, the Postman lets you like do OAuth for like your different APIs. But one thing that is new is that when you do OAuth, you request for an exchange code and use that exchange code to get an access token. That access token is mostly short-lived, and there's always a need to refresh the access token, right? So one thing that is new is when I come to this request here, you'd see that I have, there was a token here. But let me get new access token.
No, the token is gone.
Yeah, the token is gone. Yeah, I guess that's because I switched to the Postman app from the Postman web.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me do that demo here in the app. Oh yeah, so you can still see my token here.
So you're only sharing the Postman app, I think, in Zoom.
Oh, I'm only sharing the Postman app. That means I'll have to stop sharing.
So why Debo switches, I'm going to explain why this is happening. So one of the things you want to make sure when you're using tokens is that you're only using the current value of your variables, which is the one that is not shared between or not synced to servers, etc., just for security reason. Plus, we're in a in a public workspace, which means if we were using like values that are shared with everyone, then you would all be able to see it. And as much as we like you all, we don't want you to access like all of our Google documents. So that's why this is only available in a specific instance.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that, Alemi. So when I come to refresh token here, you can see that I have a token here, but it's saying token expired, and I have this refresh button here. So if I send this request is for Google Sheets API. I'm using it to get a specific Google Sheets that I've specified the ID here. When I send this request, I'm not sure why it's taking so long to respond.
I think the Google API can take a bit of time.
Yeah.
So you can, actually, you can talk about how you need it to be toggled in the auto refresh token.
Yeah. So you notice that here I have this auto refresh token here automatically toggled for me. So when this token expires, it automatically refreshes it for me. But now because I'm still using like the expired token, it says I have an invalid authentication credential. But when I click refresh here, it automatically refreshes this token for me. And now I can see that this token is going to expire at 5:37 p.m., which is exactly an hour from now. And if I wanted to refresh this token, I could click refresh again. And I could see that this is toggled. If I don't want it to auto refresh, I could untoggle this. And if I want it to auto refresh, I'll toggle this. So yeah, that's a really useful feature because you do not have to like manually refresh tokens again. It can automatically do that for you. Just make sure you have this toggle for
And
any
this
of the
was,
APIs that
yeah,
you're working with.
this was also one that we had a lot of people like asking about, but we also had a lot of creative people like coming up with scripts to automatically refresh, etc. This was very cool, but now you can just do it directly in the UI, which works as well.
Yeah. And there are times where I'm working in a request and I send that request and I have like a bunch of responses here, but then I want to like clear all of those responses. We now have that in Postman. So you can click on this ellipsis icon and see this clear response option. And when you click it, it just automatically clears all the response for you. And it's pretty neat. Then if, for example, I don't want to like clear that response, it's a response I want and I want to save it as an example, I can save this response as an example. But one thing that is new that I can do aside saving it as an example is I can now use this example and I can now run this example directly from where it's saved. So now you see that this try it here, it's new. And if I click try it, I can send this request automatically just from the saved response. So now I'm not only seeing an example of what the response looks like, I can try that request and generate that response for myself.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Good. I guess before you had to like copy paste the parameters or like you had to recreate the request if you wanted to, and now you just have this one click try it.
Yeah. So so far we've been working with the HTTP protocol, but one other one is gRPC. And I'm just going to be showing a quick example here using our Echo server as well. I'm going to be using server reflection here. Then let me invoke this request. So this is just the Echo API. One thing that is new with gRPC is you can now save the example just the way you can do with HTTP requests. So if I click on save example here, it has saved this example here now. So I could save multiple examples. I could run this again. I could save another example. I could save as much example as I like, just like the same way I could do with HTTP requests. But it's not just say, yeah, go for it.
Will this show in the documentation as well?
Yeah, this would be included in the documentation as well, because I've saved it here. And you can now alter like a documentation for gRPC APIs. Here, I could include a description for this API. I can include a table and include some data. I can include images and any other thing I want to include in my API documentation. So the documentation experience for gRPC API has been improved. And you can now do all of the different documentation stuff like doing HTTP APIs in gRPC. Then for testing as well, there's also the scripts tab here where you could include tests before the request is invoked or after the request is invoked. So this is, think of this like test and per request and test scripts. Before invoke is per request script and after response is test script. And we have this snippets here, which comes in really handy. So I could get a global variable, for example. Let me clear all of this out. I could get a collection variable, for example. So yeah. And all of this same thing, I could do them with GraphQL API. So the GraphQL client is something that is also new. We now have a new GraphQL client in Postman. So I'm just going to create a new request entirely for that. Then I'll select GraphQL request here. And I have a new GraphQL request. I can use the GraphQL Echo service and its query. But now that I'm using query, I don't actually have anything here, right? GraphQL uses the schema definition language and it has like this really cool way of querying data where I can specify exactly what I want. So it has like a concept of types and fields where I specify like types for each of the data. And I tell it, okay, if I'm making this a hello query, I want a person and I want just the name and not the age. But also one really interesting thing that you could do with the new GraphQL clients is you can see that I'm selecting a parameter of name here. I could include that name here as I could include Aleni, and that is automatically prefilled in my query. So I have a visual way of building my query without having to like write it automatically here. But also if I prefer to write it automatically here, I could do that. And then I could select age as well. I could make this 10 or 100.
Why would you write it automatically, like manually, when you have this UI though?
Yeah, because this UI is really convenient, and then you do not have to like go over and start taking a look at the documentation or the schema to know what you could do. You could already see it here, and you just have to like click buttons. Yeah. Then for this, I could just let me run this query. And you can see that I got my response back. So I could not only do it for queries, I could do the same thing for mutations. I could use this create person mutation. And you notice that immediately I select the mutation, the query is automatically grayed out. And when I select query, mutation is automatically grayed out because I could only send one of these at a time. So here for person, I could select a name as well. I could do debug. Then I want this to return the ID. And when I send this mutation, I get my response back, create person, name, and ID. Then it also supports subscriptions, which is a way for the client and the server to have bidirectional communication, whereby you could request real-time data from the server, or the server could push real-time data to the client without the client having to like request for that. So I could also test this and just send this request. And you can see that I'm getting events being emitted to me here.
Yeah, that's very cool. It sounds like there's if you look at all of the protocols we've added, so you showed server sent events, there's GraphQL subscriptions, we have gRPC, WebSockets. So for people that haven't used Postman in a while and have been focused on the kind of synchronous protocols like REST or SOAP, we've made a lot of advancement on the async kind of side, where you can like you just showed the subscription, for example, on GraphQL.
Yeah. And there's this, and one other thing that's really cool is there's this search field at the top. So if I wanted to search for errors, for example, I could search for just that. I'm not sure why it collapses. Or if I wanted to search for requests, I could search for just that and I could click this and it automatically fills that in for me. Or you notice that when I wanted to get started with this, all I just did was I selected the URL and it automatically loaded all of the schema for me. So it supports introspection right out of the box without me having to do any other thing. But if I also wanted to like import a schema from a definition, I could do that. Or you could see it, I'm using introspection. And just the same way I could do with gRPC, where I could include scripts before query and after response. It's the exact same way I could do that here as well. I'm also using the snippets to input some scripts that I could make use of here. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to save this. You have to select the collection. I could save it in this GraphQL collection. And because it is now saved, it means I could begin to write documentation from my GraphQL API, the same way I could do for every other request type in Postman. So
I missed, my Zoom crashed. I missed 2 seconds.
Yeah. So I was just talking about the documentation for GraphQL APIs. That it's the same experience as if you're working with HTTP or gRPC in Postman.
Cool.
Hey. So I think that's all I have. Let us know what you think about this new update and what you think about the new multi-protocol support in the comment section. And if you have questions, don't forget to put them in the Q&A.
I'm gonna take back over, and we have about 10 minutes left. And there's one big thing we want to show you, and then we'll open for the Q&A. But so far, what I've seen is that all the questions are getting answered anyway, so that shouldn't take long. So let me share my screen. So small name, Postman Flows, but big feature. I don't know who here was at the session we ran a month ago about Postman Flows. So Postman Flows is a low-code way to create workflows, like API workflows. We had a session about that, an hour-long session, talking through everything. So I'm not going to redo that. I'm just going to spend 2 minutes kind of showing you what's the power of Postman Flows. So if you're interested in trying it out, you can search for Postman Flows on the Learning Center, and you'll find all of the documentation, and you'll be able to build stuff like this in no time. There's a bunch of quick getting started tutorials, etc. But let me go ahead and fork one. So we have from that link, there's a bunch of workspaces that the team has put together. So if you're trying to do integrations, if you're working in DevOps, if you want to kind of look at natural language processing stuff, there's a workspace for it. So I'm going to go to the utility one, and I'm going to fork the weather application for Postman Flows. So this is a public workspace. I can see what's happening here, but I won't be able to run it from here because this is not my account. So what I'm going to do, I'll click fork, bring it to my workspace, and I'll call it Q1 demo. And then hopefully I can show you some cool stuff. So what's a flow? A flow is a set of boxes linked together, and there's data flowing through. So hence the name. So I have a start. It sends a request to a weather API. It takes some different data, so the daily, minimum, maximum, and date. And then we have these output boxes. So what do they do? Well, let me run it, and then we'll see what happens. So I'm going to zoom out, trying to make it as big as possible so you can see what's happening. This looks small. What you'll be wanting to look out for is some data flowing. So you'll see some little dots flowing through, and then we should see some stuff happening here. So typically what Flows does, get a bunch of requests, pair them together, and then you can have some visual of what's coming out of the API. You can see already here, we've actually done some filtering. We just want some stuff. We have some series. So that's the minimum and maximum. Here, what do we have? 2 days, wind speed. So now imagine doing that with your own APIs. You want to demo what different APIs do. Maybe you want to look at stocks, or maybe you want to look at product stock, etc. That's an easy way to create an API workflow, showcase it to other people, but also, just playing around with it before you push it, or you actually put something in production, sorry. So that's Flows in a nutshell. I only showed you one. I don't want to spend too much on this. Again, we had a session about a month ago, which showed a lot more. I think some people might be sharing this in the chat as I speak. So if you want to check that one out, you can go and check it out, and you'll learn all you need to know about Flows.
Yeah, that was a really good session.
Yeah, it was fun and interesting.
Yeah.
With that said, I'm going to give it back to Debo, who is going to talk about what's next. So let me click here, click there. And Debo, if you want to take over, you can take over, or if you just want to talk about it, that works too.
Yeah. So one of the things that's new is live collections. And some of you might have read this blog, but if you've not, someone will put it in the chat. So live collection is something that is coming to Postman, and you can already join the wait list or sign up for early access. So what are live collections? They're just like, they make it easier and faster for you to actually build and update collections in Postman. So the way you are able to build your APIs, you have we have an SDK, the Postman SDK, that you can install within your application and put it in the entry point to your application. And what it is going to do is it's going to observe changes you're making to your API and automatically generate a collection for you. And then as you're making changes to your API, it updates this collection without you having to do anything extra. All you just need to do is to install it in your development environment, and then it automatically creates the collection if it doesn't exist. If the collection exists, it automatically updates this collection as you update it. And then it's not just creating the collection for you, it's automatically generating documentation for that collection. So it means you can focus on building your APIs and then easily share it with people who are consuming that APIs or with your team that is working on that APIs without having to manually write a documentation for it, or without having to manually update the collection each time you make an update to a request in your API. So live collections is really, really cool. You should look out for it, and you should go through this blog post to learn more about live collections. It contains a lot of information, and there's this very interesting demo video at the end that you can watch. So it just saves you time. It ensures that you are able to build and update your collection faster. So now you can focus on things like creating a mock server or setting up monitors, because the collection is already created for you and you don't have to worry about updating that collection. And the interesting thing is, if you do not want it to automatically update, if you want to review every change that is made to that collection before the SDK before it is updated, you can review those changes and then approve. Or if you don't want those changes updated, you can modify them before it's updated.
Cool. All right, let me roll back to the slides.
Okay.
Okay, so we're now running out of time suddenly. So I'm going to quickly go through the rest. Actually, Debo, you talked about live collections. Maybe just a word about VS Code extension.
Yeah, so the VS Code extension is something that's coming as well, right? So the same way you could create a collection and run a request in Postman, we are now bringing that same experience to your development environment, VS Code. So the VS Code extension allows you to quickly prototype and run your API request in VS Code. So it's an extension like every other extension you have in VS Code. But when it's installed, it means you can test your APIs in the same environments in which those APIs are developed. And it's one that I'm really excited about. It's going to improve productivity and make it faster for developers to test and work with their APIs.
Sorry,
go for it.
I was going to add, one of the other benefit is obviously because it's Postman, it's going to be synced with your Postman account. So what you do in VS Code, you'll be able to see it. If you create a request in VS Code, it's going to appear in your Postman environment. So you'll be able to work from different places. If you want to be close to your code, you can be in VS Code. If you want to be close to your API definition, you can be in Postman. And it all comes together. There's a bunch of other stuff. I've put a link at the bottom of that slide, which is the link to the public roadmap. We're trying to keep it updated, so if you want to keep an eye on what's coming up, you can go and check it out. But with that said, I think we're reaching out the end of the session. So I'm going to share a few additional resources. First one is Postman Intergalactic. So the session you're watching now is part of Postman Intergalactic. So it's the webinars the developer relations team at Postman runs. The next one is going to be an introduction for developers. So if you're maybe getting started with Postman as a developer, or maybe you've been using Postman for a little while and you're a developer, but you're wondering what can be feasible, you should join that session. You learn quite a few things about a typical workflow and how to make your life easier with Postman. We have Postman Quick Starts. Postman Quick Starts are a plethora of kind of workshops you can do in Postman. So there's badges you could get for if you're a tester, if you're a developer, HTTP introduction to APIs, API design. There's a bunch of workshops you can do through there. I'd recommend checking it out if you want to learn more, all by doing things, not just listening. The community forum, any questions you may have, any questions we've not answered during this webinar, please go there, ask your question. We'll be there and we can answer your questions there, but the community is there as well, and they're always happy to help. And the last one is Postman Answers. That's a public workspace we've created with a bunch of solutions to things that are typically people want to do in Postman. So for example, how do I set a variable and send it in a subsequent request? How do I use maybe SHA 256 to encrypt my my password? All of these, there's collections that demo how to do these things, so you can fork them and start using them straight away. It's just making your life easier by not having to recreate from scratch. And with that said, quick time for Q&A. We've got a link to the survey that I mentioned at the start. So any feedback you have about this session, things that you didn't like, things that you liked, things that you'd like to see again, please let us know. And I'm going to look at the questions we've had. I think the panelists have done an amazing job because we don't have many questions that are unanswered.
Yeah.
One of them from Nick is, can workflows be used to show the onboarding flow of a user across several resources API? A user identity creates token, etc. So Postman Flows can be used for that, as long as these APIs are available and you have access to them. So you have the correct API keys, etc. You can have this entire flow set up. I'm pretty sure. I think we have an example of a flows that does that. So I think it's built on top of ChatHop, which is an HR tooling. But we have example flows for that. So yes, this is possible. Another question from Neil. From the testing perspective, are there any plans to have ability to add a binary file using Postman collection runs versus Newman script? You're able to add files. Oh, actually, so yeah, right. In collection runs, you would need to. So you can actually add files. They need to be in a specific folder, and you need to use the specific name. I think we have a Postman answers collection that shows how to do this. If you're struggling with that, please post in the community forum, and then we can help you there. I think there was a question about this not like a week ago. So if you do a quick search, you should be able to find the answer. I can't show you right now because I don't have the setup right there. Cool. I think that's it. That's all we had for you today. Thank you all for joining. Thank you, Debo.
Thank you, Alemi. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you to all the panelists who answered the question as we were going through. Again, next session is happening in a month. It's going to be introduction for developers at the end of this month, actually. So we'll see you there, or we'll see you on the community forum. But with that said, have a good rest of your day. Have a good evening, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.